In the sixth part of this lesson, we'll be creating 3D low poly geometry for the final model. I'll be showing you techniques that we used to create the original models, and then from reference we'll be making the final model. And since we've been using the grid this whole time, we'll be actually using that to um, make edge loops to cut the model, and then we'll be deleting those edges we don't need to lower the poly count. So let's get started. Okay, so this lesson will be creating the 3D geometry for our building. We have our two maps here. Um, so I'm just going to kind of go through what I did to make this building. We have all these parts separated, and we're going to use these to build our geometry for our building. The first thing I want to do is get this wall done, these windows, because that's going to be the biggest portion of this building. So I'm just going to copy this over and then apply our new texture to it. And we have to go in here and hit the, there it goes right there. Okay. So I'm just going to rotate this 90 degrees so we can work at it in our front view. 90 degrees, and then we'll go to our front view and take a look at it here without the edge faces on. So this is what we have for the wall. Okay, so what I want to do is use these faces that we already used, or that we already made, to work to build our low poly model from. So, and then once we get all our modeling in, we'll delete these extra faces that we don't need. But that's going to be for after we finished lining them up. So I just want to line these up to the not this side but this side of this line. So I'm just gonna make sure you have preserve UVs on, and then just move this to about right, yeah, right there. And I want to make this a point here that I'm doing it on this side, not the other side of this black line here, like this. You want it on the side that's going to be the lowest. This this polygon is going to be lower than this one, so you want it on the lowest side so that when we extrude this part, it'll become part of the upper part. So now I'm just going to move this over to here, and then I'm going to move this group of vertices over to our end here. Okay. So now I think we can just go ahead and detach this part because it's going to be a separate part. So we'll just go down to detach, and now that's a separate part, I'm going to delete all these lines that we don't need. So basically we'll just hit remove, and then we get rid of these extra blue vertices here just by hitting remove again. And let's get rid of all these extra lines here. So it might be kind of tough to kind of marquee these, but I think we can do it here. And then just hit remove. Remove again. Now let's delete all these extra ones we don't need. Since it's a separate part from this part now that we detached it, it's not going to affect this part anymore. So now let's go to our perspective view, and I'm going to extrude this part out to 100. Then I'm going to extrude these sides out to 80. No, 60. Or, well, 70 might work better. 70. No, I think I liked 60 better. Gives it more depth. Okay, so that part is done, and we're going to use our existing grid line in here to match up with our other piece. So looks like this grid on the left here, this second one to the left, is already pretty much lined up with our window here. I'm just going to move it a little bit more and then check the top one here. That should be the same. Okay, so now I'm going to move the right side over. So I'm going to grab these second to the right end vertices and put them right here. Now I'm going to do these blocks here. So I'm going to move this up to there. While we're here, while we're in this lower location, I'll just move that there too. And then let's just work our way up. Move that to there. And let's go to, looks like this one bottom here doesn't line up that much. So we'll fix that later. But for right now, I just want to make sure we get everything in the right spot here. And you can see that I'm just going to the this light gray. I'm just going to the inside of this dark gray, because that's what's going to matter in our final texture that we made. And this may look a little bit high poly right now, but I assure you when we get rid of all these extra vertices, it'll be very, very low poly. So right now I just want to continue just moving these into place. So, okay. So now, let's take a look at our example one here that we did from before, that I did before I made this tutorial. So this side's done, this is pretty much done. Now we have to worry about this. So what I'm going to do is try to match this up as best as possible. And see if we can maybe can we scale these? Yeah, we can. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. You can see there's kind of like this bevel here on the second indentation. What I want to do is actually make that like it is over here. So, sorry, we're going to have to go back a few steps here, but I'm going to move this down to about here, and we're going to create double lines. So we're going to have two lines in in this section of the pieces. We're going to have two polygons. We're also going to have to do the same thing with the end pieces here, but let's just do the horizontal ones right now. And this will make sense later when we break this apart. It should make sense now, but if it doesn't, I'll make sure it makes sense in a little bit here. So now I want to grab these outer ones here, bring them about there, grab the ones next to it, and bring them inside this blue line here, or that window here. Okay, so now this should make a little bit more sense once I continue on here. So, okay. Um, Alright, so now we have kind of our windows lined up. So what I'm going to do now is, see, there's a point here where you have to extrude these. There's a point where we have to delete these extra lines out. And I'm just kind of trying to think ahead here and see if we can do this without ruining this piece. So I'm just going to copy it over here. Just in case we make a mistake, we'll have to go back and we might not have enough to undo. Alright, so now we have kind of our windows lined up. So what I'm going to do now is, see, there's a point here where you have to extrude these. There's a point where we have to delete these extra lines out. And I'm just kind of trying to think ahead here and see if we can do this without ruining this piece. So I'm just going to copy it over here. Just in case we make a mistake, we'll have to go back and we might not have enough to undo. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break off these pieces, detach them. Now the only polygon that we need, the only vertices that we need are going to be just this one. So now it's just one polygon. Let's do the same thing for this upper one here. Delete all these extra lines and then delete the extra vertices. Remove them. If you hit delete, it's gonna ruin everything. So you gotta hit this remove. So now make these corners. and I will actually take that old part out of the video, just so it's not wasted time. I'll just mention that we did it wrong and that we're going to continue on doing it this way. So we've continued on. We're going to redo our window parts. Alright, so turn off snap, and then let's get back to deleting. And right now I have my move thing on, move transform. We don't really want that on because we don't want to move anything on accident. So if you hit Q, it turns that off, but you can still select. So I'm just going to really quickly do this. We'll have it done in no time. So I'm just continuing to move these, or remove these edges here. I think actually we needed this edge here, so we don't want to delete that edge. And again, when I say delete, I mean hit this remove button. So we'll remove that, and then get the rest of these, and then we'll extrude again, making sure that we have everything correct before we extrude. It's important that you kind of stay focused and aware of what you're doing at this point. So we don't need these lines, but we are going to need the bottom lines. We don't need these ones. We don't need these. Okay, let's do the top now. And like I said, we could just copy the top, continue to do the same steps to the top window as we did the bottom, and we're just going to skip it for right now. So that way we're not wasting time doing the same steps over. Go to our perspective view, and we already extruded this part, so let's do this one now. Now these windows are separate than these pieces, so that's really the way it should be. So let's extrude these, and I'm going to go with just a general number of, I think this was 60, right, this end, this brick part, so we'll go with 50. Now that's done. So, and you always, when extruding, you always want to extrude from this back point, this back face, because then when we put these together, we're going to line them up from behind, so they're going to have to be aligned with each other. So let's do the windows now. And for this, I want to go into our front view and select our faces because it's a little bit tougher in the perspective view to do that. So what we're going to need is these outside ones first. Do the same thing here. grab all the outside edges and this middle edge. And now let's extrude them. Now this is going to be actually not further out than our piece that we just extruded. So I'd like to get some depth in here, but I think 30 should ought to do it. Okay. Now let's select our window, actual window part, and for this we're going to move it back a bit just so we can get that bevel on there, so the bevel shows up, which is tough to see at this angle, but you can kind of see that it's higher up here than it is here. But I don't want to do that for the whole thing. I just want to do that for a little amount. So then we'll do that amount, and then we'll go back some more. Probably about another negative 30. I think that's the way it should be. Yeah, because you got the frame, then you got the actual window frame, and then the actual window is back more. Okay, so that's good. So now we need to separate this in more parts, but before we do that, so our poly count's a lot lower now. So before we do that, I think we need to fix the UVs on this, because you can kind of see that they're all stretched on this inside part. The window doesn't matter because it's pretty much just a solid color, but you can definitely see these, and you can definitely see these parts stretched, so we're going to fix those. Let's start with our mortar here, our blocks. It's just going to be on the ends, the sides, because the front's already set. So let's go to UV Map, UVW Map, and we'll go to Planner, but it's got to be the Y direction or X direction, and then hit Fit. Okay, so now that we have that kind of fit there, we're going to have to move it, the actual UVs. So we'll go to UV Unwrap W, and then open UV Editor. And those are our faces there. So right now it's taking up the whole 0, 1 space. So we don't want that, so because we want our texture. So what we're going to want to do is go to our scale and hold shift and drag in, and then go to the move tool and move it over. And I think to get these to line up right, we have to we're gonna have to grab our top vertices and move them down to the end here, and it doesn't really matter where they are in this UV editor as long as they line up in our viewport. So it looks like they're lining up pretty well. I just want to check the top, make sure that there's no line or this black part in the top of this. So that looks pretty good. Our other side's going to be the same. So let's hit the X button, and then we'll go to right click on this and go to just got a couple more. That's the last one. Okay, so now that's done. So let's go into our perspective view and extrude these. So I'm going to go to my polygon tool and actually go back to the front view, and we're just going to select all the outer edges. Okay, now let's extrude these, but we don't want them going past the point of this bottom piece. So if we hit extrude, I think it was at 25 before, so let's keep it at that. And then we'll grab these inside window panes, and I'm going to scale them in. No, I'm just going to move them back, I think. So let's make sure that they're all going to be moving back in the right way. So you want to create as much depth as possible, kind of over exaggerate things a little bit. So I'm just going to pull them back to about, I don't know, here. And make sure the ones at the top work this time. Okay, so that's good. So now let's extrude. And we'll just go back like, I don't know, another 30. Try to keep your numbers all evenly. And that looks pretty good. So now that's looking good. So now we got to do is just fix these ends here. I mean these side pieces that are obviously they're stretched because they have a lot of lines going through them. I mean, well, if I take a look at zoom in on this one, you can see all these lines are stretched. Not that we're gonna see this ever probably in this model, but just for the sake of being thorough, we're gonna UV these edge faces. So we're gonna remap them. And then we'll have to do the top ones different on a different next. So we want to go to Uvw Map, and then make sure on Planner, and then we want the X-axis, and then make sure you hit Fit. And now we'll go to our Unwrap Uvw, go to Open in Editor, bring this kind of over here, make sure we select our material, and now select our faces, and then scale them, hold shift, move in, and then we're just going to move them to, I guess, anywhere in here, probably like the middle maybe. And then we need to scale them down. Not sure how much really we need to do it, but probably let's try there. And then move them down into place. Might have to move these separately. Actually, no, they fit exactly where we wanted them. The only thing is this side now is over there. So if we could select these ends here and then move them to this side, that would be better. Now let's do the top. So just go to collapse all, and see that kind of solved that problem there. But we still have the I'm not going to do these inside edge ones because they're pretty much just one color anyway. And we're not going to be that close to this, but I want to do, actually I want to do these parts too of these blocks. But we'll do those separate. But now what we're trying to get is get rid of these stretch lines here. So let's go to our polygon tool, click on this one, and then the one beneath it. Oops. Make sure you hold Control and not Shift, otherwise you'll select everything between. And I think I just moved that one. So hit Q, and Q will not move it because it's not going to move selection. It's just got the manipulator to show you where you selected. Click on that. And then we're going to go to do this again and go to the Uvw Map first. And right now we're on the x-axis, so we don't want that, we want the y, and then hit fit, and that'll fit the y to this plane. Let's go to our UV unwrap W, and now we're at the 0 space, or 0, 1 space, so we don't want that, so we want to turn on our material, and then hold shift and bring this in, and then move these vertices over so that they fit in within this spot here. And I guess just to be consistent, we'll grab these two ends for this bottom one and move them down. Okay, so it looks good. So now let's do the same thing for our